Have you ever stopped to think that freezing the wrong foods can actually put your health at risk? That's right. Something as seemingly harmless as storing food in the freezer can compromise your digestion, affect nutrient absorption, and even increase the risk of food poisoning, especially after 60, when the body no longer responds with the same efficiency as before. My name is Dr. William Tharnell. I'm a physician specializing in elderly health, with over 25 years of experience in geriatrics and integrative medicine. And what I'm about to reveal in this video is urgent for anyone who wants to live longer and better. Many patients come to me feeling tired, with frequent intestinal issues or vague symptoms like discomfort, bloating, and loss of appetite. And when we investigate their eating habits, we find a pattern: excessive and indiscriminate use of the freezer. The problem? Not all foods can be safely frozen. Some change in structure, ferment, accumulate water, develop microorganisms, and completely lose their nutritional value. Over time, this can trigger silent inflammation, intestinal infections, or serious nutritional deficiencies. According to the World Health Organization, older adults are among the most vulnerable to illnesses caused by improperly stored food. And while the freezer can be an ally, it must be used wisely. That's why, in this video, I'll show you the 7 foods that should never be frozen. And more, I'll explain exactly what happens to each of them in the freezer and how it directly affects your health. So stay with me until the end, because what you learn here could prevent serious problems and preserve your vitality for years to come. After 60, the body begins to undergo significant changes. Digestion slows, the immune system becomes less efficient, and the ability to absorb essential nutrients may decline. That's why any mistake in food storage has a much greater impact than it would on a younger person. Freezing food is common but not always safe. Freezing alters the physical and chemical structure of many ingredients. For example, when a water-rich food is frozen, the ice crystals that form rupture its internal fibers, changing its texture and promoting microbial growth upon thawing. For someone over 60, this can range from mild indigestion to serious foodborne illness. Additionally, many older adults take daily medications and have chronic conditions like diabetes, hypertension, or heart disease. Poorly stored food can interfere with these treatments, cause inflammation, and even overwork the liver and kidneys, which are naturally more sensitive with age. Another rarely discussed issue is nutritional value. Some foods lose essential vitamins like vitamin C, B-complex vitamins, and antioxidants that fight cellular aging when frozen. So you might be eating, even making an effort to eat well, but not absorbing what your body truly needs. That's why it's crucial to know which foods should never be frozen, especially in later life. And that's exactly what we'll cover next. Freezing food is undoubtedly a practical way to preserve it longer. But what few people know is that freezing also transforms these foods internally, and not always for the better. When food is exposed to very low temperatures, the water inside it turns into ice crystals. These crystals rupture the food's cell walls, damaging its internal structure. The result? When thawed, the food loses its original texture, becoming mushy, watery, or altered in taste. This is common with fruits, vegetables, and dairy. But the problem goes beyond texture. Freezing also affects nutritional value. Cold-sensitive vitamins like vitamin C and folate are destroyed or severely reduced in the process. This is especially harmful for older adults, as the body already struggles to absorb these nutrients naturally. And there's more. Freezing doesn't kill bacteria, it just makes them inactive. If food is poorly cleaned or stored incorrectly, these bacteria reactivate upon thawing, potentially causing infections. For those with weaker immune systems, like older adults, this is a real risk. Additionally, freezing and refreezing food, something many people do without realizing, increases the danger even more. With each cycle, the food loses quality, accumulates microorganisms, and can become an invisible vector for disease. That's why choosing what goes into the freezer requires much more discernment. From now on, you'll learn the 7 foods that should never be frozen, especially if you're over 60. Food 1. Raw eggs in their shells. It might seem practical to store eggs in the freezer to avoid waste, but this is one of the worst choices someone can make, especially after 60. When a raw egg in its shell is exposed to freezing, the liquid inside expands. Since the shell is porous and fragile, it can crack or even burst. This creates a perfect entry point for bacteria like Salmonella, one of the leading causes of foodborne illness in older adults. The problem is, even if the egg looks normal after thawing, contamination may have already occurred. Additionally, the structure of the egg white and yolk changes significantly in extreme cold. The white becomes overly gelatinous, and the yolk turns grainy and nearly unusable in recipes. This compromises both flavor and nutritional quality. Eggs are a precious source of protein, choline, and vitamin D, essential nutrients for maintaining muscle mass, cognitive function, and bone health in older adults. But freezing them the wrong way can turn a healthy food into a hidden health risk. If you need to store eggs longer, the best method is to crack them, lightly beat the yolk and white together, and store them in airtight freezer-safe containers. Even so, it's always better to consume them fresh. Food 2. High-water vegetables, lettuce, cucumber. If you've ever tried freezing lettuce or cucumber, you've likely seen what happens when they thaw. They turn into wilted leaves and soggy pieces, colorless, flavorless, and completely textureless. But the problem goes far beyond appearance. Vegetables like lettuce, cucumber, zucchini, and tomato are over 90% water. When frozen, the water inside forms large ice crystals that rupture the food's cellular structure. The result is a complete degradation of both nutritional and physical integrity. After 60, the body naturally produces less stomach acid and digestive enzymes. This means poorly stored or degraded foods can cause discomfort like gas, bloating, slow digestion, and, in some cases, recurring diarrhea. Additionally, these vegetables lose nearly all their vitamin C content during freezing. And this vitamin is crucial for the immune system, cell regeneration, and iron absorption, all essential processes for healthy aging. The best approach is to consume these vegetables fresh. If you struggle to go to the market often, store them in regular refrigeration for up to 4 days in airtight containers. Buying smaller portions that can be quickly consumed is also a good idea. Food 3. Dairy, like yogurt and soft cheeses. Many people, seeing that yogurt is close to its expiration date or that there's leftover cheese at the end of the week, turn to the freezer as a quick solution. But when it comes to dairy, especially yogurt, cream cheese, and milk, this practice can be more harmful than imagined, particularly in later life. Freezing drastically alters the structure of dairy products. When thawed, yogurt tends to separate into liquid and curdled phases, with a gritty texture and sour taste. Cheeses like ricotta, cream cheese, or buffalo mozzarella also suffer. They become crumbly, lose smoothness, and degrade in flavor. Beyond texture, there's a nutritional risk. Dairy is an important source of calcium, protein, and probiotics. Freezing these foods can destabilize these compounds, reducing their bioavailability, meaning the body absorbs less of them. This is critical for older adults, especially for maintaining bone density and gut flora balance. Another issue is food safety. When thawed, dairy creates a moist environment ideal for bacterial growth, such as Listeria monocytogenes, a real threat to the weakened immune systems of older adults. The recommendation is clear: consume dairy fresh whenever possible. If storage is necessary, opt for small portions and strictly observe expiration dates. Food 4. Cooked potatoes. Potatoes are among the most consumed foods worldwide. They're versatile, tasty, and, when well prepared, provide important energy and fiber. But when frozen after cooking, they become a real problem, especially for those over 60. When cooked potatoes are frozen, the starch inside undergoes retrogradation. This means the starch's chemical structure changes, creating a sandy, rubbery, or even crumbly texture. The flavor also deteriorates, becoming overly sweet or metallic. Additionally, improperly thawed frozen cooked potatoes can develop pockets of moisture, promoting bacterial growth, especially if refrozen, a common mistake in disorganized households. For older adults, this poses real risks: poor digestion, intestinal discomfort, and loss of the nutritional value potatoes offer, such as potassium, vitamin B6, and fiber, all essential for cardiovascular health, muscle function, and intestinal regularity. If you need to store cooked potatoes, keep them refrigerated for no more than 2 days, well covered and away from raw foods. For convenience, prepare smaller portions that can be eaten in 1 or 2 meals. Food 5. Starch-based sauces, like bechamel. Sauces like bechamel, made with flour, milk, and butter, are common in everyday cooking. Creamy, easy to prepare, and versatile, they seem ideal for freezing and using later. But this is one of the biggest mistakes in home food preservation, especially when discussing health in later life. The starch in these sauces, whether from wheat, corn, or potatoes, undergoes intense structural changes during freezing. When thawed, these sauces tend to separate. Liquids pool, the emulsion breaks, and the flavor becomes off-putting with a stale or rancid taste. The texture shifts from smooth and creamy to clumpy or gritty. But the issue isn't just sensory. When the sauce loses cohesion, it also encourages microbial growth during thawing. Since starch is an energy-rich substrate, it feeds bacteria, posing an extra risk for those with slower immune systems or digestive issues. Moreover, many of these sauces contain milk, which, as we've seen, doesn't react well to freezing. For those over 60, this can mean episodes of indigestion, reflux, intestinal fermentation, and even diarrhea. A better alternative? Prepare these sauces fresh or store them refrigerated for up to 48 hours in airtight containers. For time saving, prep the ingredients and mix them just before use. Food 6. Water-rich fruits, like watermelon and orange. Watermelon, orange, pineapple, papaya, these are refreshing, flavorful fruits packed with water. That's precisely why many older adults freeze them for quick, healthy snacks. But what seems like a good idea can backfire, especially in later life. High-water fruits don't respond well to freezing. The abundant water inside forms large ice crystals that rupture the fruit's cell walls. The result upon thawing is mushy, waterlogged flesh with no taste and an unappetizing appearance. This ruins not only texture but also the joy of eating, something essential for maintaining appetite and interest in food among older adults. But the issue goes beyond aesthetics. When frozen and thawed, these fruits lose much of their cold-sensitive vitamins, like vitamin C and natural antioxidants. In an aging body, where cell renewal is slower and immunity needs constant support, this loss is significant. Additionally, thawing can trigger natural fermentation in these fruits, causing gas, bloating, and digestive discomfort. This is especially noticeable in those with sensitive digestion or frequent constipation. For longer storage, keep these fruits peeled and cut in the fridge for 2 to 3 days max. You can also freeze them exclusively for smoothies or juices, but never for fresh consumption. Food 7. Mayonnaise and emulsified sauces. Mayonnaise is in salads, sandwiches, spreads, and countless sauces. Its creamy texture and mild flavor make it a convenient choice. But freezing mayonnaise, or any sauce containing oil and egg emulsions, must be avoided at all costs, especially after 60. When frozen, the emulsion that gives mayo its consistency breaks. The ingredients separate, water pools, oils split, and the result is a greasy, unappetizing mess. Even if you try remixing it, the original texture is lost forever. But the bigger issue isn't appearance, it's microbiology. Homemade mayo, containing raw eggs, is naturally sensitive to temperature changes. When frozen and thawed, it can become a breeding ground for dangerous bacteria like Salmonella or Listeria, a real risk for older adults' health. Even store-bought versions with preservatives aren't formulated for freezing. The process alters their chemistry, potentially causing heartburn, nausea, or mild food poisoning, especially in those with gastritis or reflux. The solution is simple. Use mayo only fresh and store it refrigerated at 2 to 5 degrees Celsius. When making homemade mayo-based sauces, prepare small batches and avoid leftovers. After 60, the digestive system undergoes natural changes that make the body more sensitive to what we eat. Stomach acid production decreases, intestinal motility slows, and the ability to absorb essential nutrients like vitamins and minerals declines. That's why any mistake in food preparation or storage can have a direct, and often silent, impact on an older adult's health. When food is improperly frozen, it doesn't just lose texture or flavor, it can become empty, with low nutritional value and high potential for gastrointestinal distress. For example, water-soluble vitamins like vitamin C and B-complex are highly unstable under temperature fluctuations. During freezing, especially if the freezer temperature varies, these vitamins are partially or fully destroyed. Another key issue is the formation of hard-to-digest compounds. Starchy foods like potatoes and flour-thickened sauces undergo structural changes when frozen, fermenting more easily in the gut upon consumption. This can cause gas, bloating, heartburn, and even diarrhea. Moreover, repeated freezing and thawing encourages pathogenic microbe growth. These microbes often don't change the food's smell or appearance, but, once inside an older adult's body, can trigger infections or intestinal inflammation, worsening conditions like diverticulitis, IBS, and chronic gastritis. Another concern is the loss of natural enzymes in certain foods. These enzymes aid digestion and nutrient absorption. When food is frozen incorrectly or for too long, these enzymes are destroyed, making digestion even harder. In short, freezing is a useful tool, but only when used wisely. For older adults, the priority should always be keeping food as fresh and intact as possible, because that's what ensures effective nutrition, a healthy gut, and strong immunity. One of the most common questions I hear in my practice is, Dr. Tharnell, if I can't freeze certain foods, how can I store them longer without risking my health? The answer lies in balancing safe preservation methods, proper portioning, and smart planning. The first tip is simple yet powerful: buy less, more often. Many older adults fall into the trap of monthly bulk shopping, accumulating food that eventually gets frozen, even items that shouldn't be. Switching to weekly shopping for smaller, fresher portions reduces waste and eliminates the need to freeze unsuitable foods. Another great option is airtight refrigeration storage. Many foods last longer when kept in well-sealed containers at 2 to 5 degrees Celsius. Leafy greens like lettuce and arugula, for instance, stay fresh for up to 5 days if washed, dried with paper towels, and stored in closed containers with a dry top layer to absorb moisture. For fruits, dehydration is an effective solution. This can be done at home using a low-temperature oven or a dehydrator. Drying fruits like apples, bananas, or apricots preserves most nutrients and greatly extends shelf life, without freezing drawbacks. For sauces, creams, or purees, prepare small batches and store them in portion-sized containers for immediate use. A handy trick is freezing simpler sauces like pesto or tomato paste in ice cube trays, never dairy, or starch-based. These cubes can be stored in freezer bags and used in cooked dishes after thawing. And never underestimate the power of meal planning. Organizing weekly meals in advance helps cook only what's needed, reduces leftovers, and keeps food fresher on the plate and in the body. Storing food well is a way to store your health, energy, and independence, too. While many foods shouldn't be frozen, a good variety can be safely stored in the freezer, as long as key precautions are followed. Especially after 60, proper freezing isn't just about taste. It's a direct health protection measure. The first rule is temperature control. The freezer should stay at a constant -18 degrees Celsius or lower. Fluctuations, common in old or overcrowded freezers, compromise food integrity and increase the risk of large ice crystals that ruin texture and promote microbial growth upon thawing. Second, use proper packaging. Always opt for BPA-free plastic containers, freezer-safe bags, or airtight glass jars. Poorly sealed packaging lets in air, causing freezer burn, those whitish spots that ruin flavor and nutrients. Divide food into single portions. This prevents the dangerous habit of refreezing. Portioning ensures you freeze only what you'll eat, saves space, and speeds thawing while preserving food quality. Label everything. Note contents and freezing dates. This visual tracking is essential for those living alone or with simpler routines. On average, meats last up to 3 months frozen, cooked beans, 1 month, soups and broths, 2 to 3 months. And thaw safely. Never thaw food at room temperature. This encourages bacterial growth. Instead, transfer it to the fridge for 12 to 24 hours. If in a hurry, Use the microwave but cook immediately after. These simple practices make all the difference. They don't just preserve food, they protect your stomach, intestines, liver, and vitality. Remember, mindful freezing is an act of self-care. George is one of my longest-standing patients. A 72-year-old widower, he'd always been health-conscious, walking daily, monitoring blood pressure, taking medications correctly, and avoiding processed foods. Yet, in recent months, he began complaining of frequent digestive issues, gas, bloating, lost appetite, and unexplained fatigue. Initially, tests showed nothing alarming. But during a detailed consultation, reviewing his eating habits together, I noticed a pattern. George froze almost everything. He bought in bulk, prepped weekly portions, and stored everything in the freezer, even salads, cut fruits, whole eggs, and creamy sauces. He believed he was doing right, organizing meals to avoid waste. Unknowingly, he was compromising his daily nutrition. Gradually, we adjusted this habit. George started buying smaller portions, avoiding freezing sensitive foods, and prioritizing fresh meals, however simple. Within weeks, his symptoms faded. Digestion improved, appetite returned, and so did his energy. "Doctor, I thought I was eating well, but now I see I was feeding myself dead food," he told me. This is the kind of change that transforms lives. And it starts with accurate information, attention to detail, and conscious choices, exactly what you're doing by watching this video to the end. Throughout this video, we've seen how a simple daily act, like freezing food, can deeply impact health, especially after 60. What seemed practical, harmless, or even necessary can compromise nutrients, harm digestion, and jeopardize food safety. We've covered the 7 foods never to freeze: raw eggs and shells, water-rich vegetables, sensitive dairy, cooked potatoes, starchy sauces, high-moisture fruits, and emulsions like mayo. When poorly stored, these items pose often overlooked risks that accumulate over years, weakening vitality and inviting silent illnesses. But the goal was never to scare, it was to clarify. Because understanding how your body works leads to better choices. And making good choices, especially about food, is a form of self-respect and love for those who care about you. Later life is a time of wisdom but also vulnerability. That's why every precaution counts. Choosing fresh foods, respecting freezing limits, heeding your body's signals, and maintaining safe, nutritious eating isn't just a healthy habit, it's a daily investment in your independence, well-being, and longevity. Share this video with other older adults, family, and caregivers. Information saves lives, and it can start in your kitchen. I'm Dr. William Tharnell. It's been an honor guiding you here. See you in the next video. Until then, take care of yourself, because no one else can live your life for you.